So yesterday we saw how that the mark for man is God. The mark for man is God. God in his administration decided that he will impose upon himself a certain limitation. And the limitation he imposed upon himself was to be spirit. Because if God is spirit, he will not have legitimacy to operate in this three-dimensional frame of reference. The reason for which he decided to be spirit was because of man. The way he designed man was such that man was supposed to be his tabernacle. So God wears the spirit of man, and because of man, God can still be factored in this frame of reference. But the thing about that arrangement is that man will decide to submit completely to the authority of God, and that is what will afford God the opportunity to use man as his vessel that will bring him into this realm. The yieldedness of man will become the expression of God. And so if you go to the book of Romans chapter 6 and you study the path of spiritual progress, number 5 on that path is yield. I know you know number 1, 2, 3. Number 5 on the path of spiritual progress is yield. And the reason why yielding to God is a big matter is that God, through your redemption, has worn your spirit. Your spirit becomes his garment, and he wore it. But the extent to which we'll see God express his will through your life is going to be determined by the extent to which you yield to him. So you see, it came to pass in the garden that God offered us an opportunity in Adam. And you see, that opportunity that God offered us, because we became a living soul in Adam the moment he breathed into us the breath of life. Adam will determine his lines of development by the choices that he makes. And that's why Satan had the opportunity to advertise the possibilities of partaking of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. God had the opportunity to disabuse him from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil so that he will partake of the tree of life. But in final analysis, man will have to make the choice himself. And unfortunately, he chose the tree of death. Because the consequence of partaking in the tree of life is death, is separation from God. So the objective for which man was created in the image of God was defeated by reason of the stand of dominion, stand of rebellion that Adam decided to take. So he could no longer function with God. He became a creature that had a different image. He will now be used to establish the kingdom of darkness. If we turn in our Bible to the book of Isaiah chapter 14, you will see the lofty dream of Lucifer as he attempted to take authority over the mountain of God. In the book of Isaiah chapter 14, verse 12 to 14, the Bible says, "How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thy heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High." First of all, in order for us to look in detail at this desire of the devil. I'd like us to count how many I wills we have in this progression of revelation. How many I wills can you find there? So you are not ready. You are not ready. 5 I wills. Meanwhile, the situation we have here is a personality that is trying to exercise his will apart from the will of God. Now, do you still remember the prayer in the book of Matthew chapter 6 verse 9? It said, thy will, thy own will, not my will, but thine own will be done on earth. How is it supposed to be done? In the same fashion as it is found in heaven, without modifications. Just in the same fashion as it is found in heaven. That is the extent to which we are supposed to create prayer opportunities for the will of God to be established in the same fashion upon the face of the earth. Are you there? Now, so God already has a will, and that will has been fully implemented in the heavenlies. Part of what prayer does is to create opportunities for God to be able to have that measure of authority upon the face of the earth to implement his will on earth as it is already implemented in the heavens. It means that in the heavenlies, God can manifest his authority to the fullest extent. Are you there? Anytime we talk about will, we must also talk about authority. Because the reason why the will of God is done in heaven is because God has authority. He can manifest his authority to the fullest extent, and that's why his will is done in heaven. Are you there? So even though you gave your life to Christ, if God cannot exercise his authority over your life, unfortunately, he cannot manifest his will through your life. And that's why the 5th point on the part of spiritual progress that I just mentioned is yield. The extent to which you yield, somebody saying, oh, I want to be a praying warrior, I want to work miracles, I want to do signs and wonders. It's possible. But you see, the possibility of realizing that dream is dependent on how much you yield. So we see Lucifer making known his intention, and this intention is contrary to the will of God. And the act of exercising your will apart from the will of God, the act of exercising your will contrary to the will of God, the act of exercising your will against the will of God is iniquity. Are you there? The will of God is known, but you are exercising your will against the will of God. The prophetic story that Isaiah told in the book of Isaiah about the fall of Lucifer is tied to a situation where someone exercises his will against the will of God. So the Bible says, how art thou falling? How is it that you could fall? Oh, Lucifer. Lucifer means light bearer. How come? Is it possible for the light bearer to fall? Thou that didst weaken the nations. Because he has expressed his glory in so many colors of brilliance that it is unheard of to think that this bright star could fall. So there was an inquiry into how he fell, and he fell because he exercised his will against the will of God. Now you see, are you there? It's not only Lucifer that fell by this trap. I've seen preachers that were humble and God began to commit things to them, and suddenly they now began to gain some form of influence. So they started becoming loose. And they accepted principles that were not really Christ principles. Some antichrist technology, some antichrist principles. And it was working for some time. And then they became victims of those principles that they subscribed to, because every principle is connected to a principality. Every principle. And that's why we must be sure that the principles that you are running with are principles that are righteous. Because if they are not righteous, you are doing business, you are trading with principal spirits that such principles mirror their civilization. And after a while, these principalities will make demands on you. And when they do, you see, you are profiting from unrighteousness. You are profiting from strategies that sustain textures that are anti-kingdom. But it seems to be bringing results. And this generation is a generation of results. You know, and that's why we eventually get to accept the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, because it can produce results. Meanwhile, there is no life of God in those results that are produced. It will come to a time where the principles will overwhelm the entire system, and the principality will begin to make demands. At such a time, you cannot escape. Because if you escape, it means that the system you have built is going to suffer loss. And no one wants to be seen as a failure. So in order for him to keep that ship of success in the eyes of men, he will be in a situation where he will use his will apart from the will of God. The moment that has happened, then the thing that happened to Lucifer that we're investigating, his fall.